Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Shaman's Cave. I'm Renee Barabo, the practical shaman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Ingerman, and welcome to the Shaman's Cave. So, I am actually going to let Renee talk because this is a very exciting time. In We're celebrating the release of Renee's new book, A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom: 11 Insights. And so, before we let Renee even say anything, I'd really love to ask the group to take a deep breath and to go down into your heart, because we really both put out a lot for the show. And this book, Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom, written by Renee, was such an amazing passion, a gift that she's really bringing through from her heart and from the deepest place of her soul. And let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate that amazing creativity that is going to feed the whole entire web of life with some blessing, with some gift. We all have a part of what we need to know how to thrive through the coming times. And Renee brought through some really beautiful wisdom of tools and roadmaps and simple things that we can use to help us in our day, to help us in our life, to help us on our path. And so this is an amazing thing to write a book. It's amazing. It's where you just tear open your heart and your soul and you bring through this deep wisdom that's coming through you. And the feeling to be fed with love for that sacrifice, as even Renee writes about in this amazing book, the give and take of what Renee shared, and now to be fed by our community with unconditional love and gratitude for the inspiration that Renee is sharing and for her bravery of being willing to bring out a book that helps us on our path at this particular point of time. So, this is a day of celebration, and I ask all of you to open your hearts and celebrate the release of A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom: 11 Insights, written by our dear friend Renee.
Wow, you touched my heart. I'm crying. You guys can't see it because we're only audio now, but I'm very moved by that sharing. And you know me, I'm the marketer in the crew here, so I'm going to say, show your love and support by going over today and either buying it on Ingram Spark or Amazon, or going to your bookstore and asking them to carry it, because I think it is a book for this time. And as my mother says, it's so much easier to read than your first book, Renee.
Yeah, as you know, Renee and I have really long conversations before we start our calls. And we were talking about how where the world is today. I just learned the acronym. I never heard it before. TM, uh, T, TR, too much to read. It's really an interesting acronym. But I can say that when I sat down to read Renee's book, and I have I've had a few too many TBIs, and so it's my eyes don't track, and so it's really difficult for me to read. But it was so easy for me to be able to pick up through the writing just some really deep wisdom that would feed my soul without having to get lost in too much information.
Mhm.
Just words and passages and deep wisdom that spoke to my heart, and I didn't have to worry about getting my mind too involved in it.
Yeah, that seems to be the response so far. You know, my friend Lori Lothian, lunatic astrologer, said Renee, it's a cross between the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People and the 4 Agreements. You learn to write is what it does. And then one morning I got a phone call from this dear friend of mine who's I think she's in her 80s, and said, Renee, there are so many little pearls of wisdom in that book, and it's so easy to read. I just, it's masterful. And she was a New York Times bestseller. And so that was kind of a really, really nice thing as well. But I want to tell you, our listeners, a story about how this book came to be, because it's very shamanic, even though the book really is not, it's not in the shaman shelf. It's in the mindfulness, travel, and walking shelves, and maybe a little bit under memoir and biography. But last year, and I told this story, there was several deaths, and they were all circled around this 1111 number showing up over and over and again. And in January, out of the blue, this man that I had gone to, my shaman training with, that I hadn't spoken to in 10 years, sent me a gift out of the blue. It was the wind compass with all the winds blowing. You've probably seen it. It's an old picture of all of the winds blowing in from all of the directions. And we had never talked about the wind work. And I was surprised to get this gift. I mean, it really came unannounced out of the blue. And then a few months later, I knew I needed a pilgrimage. I thought I was going to go to Greece, but I was waiting and waiting for the email to arrive. But the very next day, I got this email from a friend of mine taking people to the Camino. And I'm there like, I just wrote her back, and I'm there like, hey, if I get a group, can I go with? And it was like a matter of a minute, and I was heading off to Portugal. That same man wrote me again. And I don't know if you people know him. His name is Don Diefendorf. And he said, I can't walk the Camino, but could you walk for me? And, I'm there like, well, sure. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll figure this out. And again, out of the blue comes this book called Walking Home by Sonia Choquette. And so I was like, really, I felt like this real sense of deep service to walk for him. And so I started on the trail every morning before I got into the walking, because trust me, walking 10, 11 miles a day is not easy. I did a little insight for him of what I gained the day before by asking better questions of myself every day. And then I came home and I'm there like, wow, they were really great insights and people were really liking them. I should write them down. And literally this summer, this book came together. It was fast and furious. And my editor couldn't hardly believe that because at the same time, I was sending out The Practical Shaman to publishers, getting rejection after rejection. And this book came about, and it didn't feel like, I didn't even care if there was a publisher, because I was doing these insights for Don. And so then I finished the book, and I'm there like, Don never told me what he thought about my insights. And I get this resounding message in the morning. It said, he's no longer with us. Mm. So I go on Facebook and I look. Sure enough, he had passed away the day that I started walking. Oh, and wow. I didn't even know it. And it's probably, I didn't know it because had I known it, I might not have done those insights every day. And I certainly probably wouldn't have written the book, but I was walking him home.
Right.
And he sent me the book. I just didn't know I was walking him home. And, right. and it really, really moved me on a few levels, because I never called him. I was just sending an email, and this is how we are in this day and age. We don't pick up the phone. He was sending me gifts and asking for this, and he might have known or not known about this book, but essentially when I went to do this, it was a bigger calling and a bigger mission than I even knew when I started.
Yeah, and so much of the book is about sacrifice and the sacrifices that we make. and where those sacrifices lead us to, the gifts that they end up bringing us. It's like when we make a sacrifice on that kind of level to make a commitment to walk for another person and to walk 10 to 11 miles a day. It's like in that invocation that I literally downloaded for Renee. It's where a part of you is open to a place, I want to say torn apart, but it's torn apart in a beautiful way. It's not torn apart in a graceful, a destructive, or a suffering way. It's where this creative love from the universe that really pushes us to do the work of the divine starts to come through. And it doesn't come through a usual channel. If you've never written anything really deep, if you've just written linearly from your mind, you don't understand the places in your soul that have to open up to write from. And those are the books that bring through the deepest wisdom. And a sacrifice brings us to that place. Every book that we write, every pilgrimage we go on, every initiation we go through is a sacrifice for ourselves, and it's a sacrifice for the entire web of life. It just opens us up to a new consciousness inside of ourselves. And from that place, we become different people. Forget about what it does for the world. It does a lot for the world. We already know that. But think about what it would do for you to be able to make that kind of commitment, not necessarily going to Portugal, but some kind of commitment that creates a sacrifice inside of you that allows... I have this thing that sometimes I teach in my workshops for what we really need to be doing in our lives. And it goes, it's like a little mantra that I say. First, we have to dismember, discreate, uncreate, dissolve, destroy. And that's part of the sacrifice. And then what happens next is after we open and after the sacrifice, we remember, we create, we weave, we nurture, we sing rebirth. And so it's a mantra that I actually share in most of the workshops that I teach, not all, because it has to be appropriate, obviously, to the subject. But I feel like that's kind of what Renee did. In A Pilgrim's Guide, she talked about the getting down to the core, and then the gifts and the blessings and the strength that you get after that new creativity that comes to you after being on such a path.
Absolutely. And for me, the book was finished really quickly. And the editor kept saying, this is a way better book than I thought this was going to be, because there's a lot of books on the Camino, but this really isn't a book about the Camino. Right. It just happened to take place on that walk. But, one of my other really dear friends who watched as I learned to write said, I want you to take more walks because you tell great stories. And that's Sandra and I's commitment this year, is to tell you more stories. So maybe I'll weave in some of those stories as we go. But about the creativity, in August, the book was pretty much done and could have come out earlier. But I went to an astrologer in August, and I said, hey, I want to know dates. I said, I have a book ready to come out. Should it come out in November or February? And he looked at the dates, and he said, he said, no, there's another project that needs to get finished to come out in November. And I'm there like, what do you mean another project? two launches back to back? And he said, yeah, I think so. And the Wind Walker Wisdom cards, they were 10 years in the making, and they froze with me because I couldn't find the right art and I couldn't get it the right way. And I still had research to do. And he's there like, no, those are going to come out this fall. And so I like really had to get into double duty to get, I had done the research. I hadn't finished all of it and putting it all together. And so I got it together. And sure enough, I've sold over 400 and I had to take my attention off of it to launch the book. But so one creative project led to another creative project. And I had been really stuck for 6 years after Winds of Spirit because I thought Winds of Spirit was going to come out and everyone was going to embrace it and that it was going to like take the shamanic community by storm. And instead, it was like, no, I brought this book out that no one had ever heard about wind work. So I had to make a tribe. I had to create it so that people would then find a place for it in their hearts and in their, their bookcases. And that was really exhausting. And so I didn't write. And I don't know how many of you have been disappointed by a project that you've done or such that you get into this state. But for me, this idea of walking myself through this, walking myself home to my own creations was a huge experience. And from it, this whole other idea that I've started the Book Walkers Club, where we're going to read a chapter a week and we're going to walk. And you're going to walk where you are. You might listen to the audiobook, but we're going to walk and then we're going to get back together and talk about it. And because I think that, both Sandra and I have been saying for a long time, it's time for community to get back to community. This idea of going to listen to a shamanic class online where you're not participating and not doing the work is over. Because it's going to run its course.
Absolutely. No, I think you can already see people are looking for smaller communities right now. And I think that's what this time was supposed to be about. For so many years, I've been writing and teaching that the key for the coming times is going to be creating really strong communities. But what happens in the human condition is we wait for catastrophes to force us to create small communities. And so we've been seeing that. We've been seeing a lot of catastrophes over the years, creating small communities. But now, the times that we're living in, there's too much. If you focus on every single thing going on in the world, you're going to make yourself crazy and you're not in service. You're not. And so really saying, I think it's time for me to join a community and really focus my work on myself, and that's the way to really be a presence and hold space in the world. And so I'm starting to see, because I don't want to be on social media, but I stay on social media just so I can watch patterns that are going on. And I'm seeing a pattern of people looking for smaller communities to be able to work with and to be able to connect with, and not be so worried about the planet, but just where you live inside of yourself, your own personal home, your body, and where you live on the body of your land.
Mm-hmm. I know I've told you all this several times. I'm the president of the board of the HOA up where I live. And, one of my big accomplishments lately was getting a house torn down that had been, fire ridden and had been having, meth addicts habitating it. And to me, like, the whole community changed when the bank finally tore this house down last week. And, people are dancing and walking by it again and thinking of how nice it's going to be when somebody else puts a home there that they love. And that's shamanic. The shamans were always concerned with the community, longevity, the health and healing of people. And it was only when we had the luxury of going off to, be spiritual pioneers. But that was the training for these difficult times that we're in now. And so like a walk community or, the Oracle Club that I have, these are all about getting back to the basics of how do we help each other? How do we walk each other home? How do we walk each other into, the next place in our lives? And so I really do recommend that you order my book today because it's a risk putting yourself out there. Sandra said that we risk ourselves. I mean, some of her most brilliant books are some of the ones that have sold the least. It's like you keep doing it and you keep going and because we write because we have to write. And if you like what we're doing, you can support our writing, buy Sandra's books, buy my books, buy other people that you like. And, that's adding again to the web of life. It's not like sucking from it, it's adding to it. So how do you want to add to your community and to your web of life?
Yeah, so there is deep wisdom out there, and you have deep wisdom inside of yourself too, but a lot of us have forgotten it. I think it's time for us to end the show, but I do want to say that every one of my 13 books I wrote for myself. I wrote for myself because I didn't know how to get through. So I brought my soul speaks. I don't channel the spirits. I've never channeled spirits in not one of my 13 books. I've channeled my own soul. My own soul has given me the information in every one of my books of how to get through the challenges and how to get through the mental states that were dragging me down. And it just turned out that it helped a lot of people. And I feel that, Renee went on a real walking adventure, and her soul really came through in A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom. So once again, Renee, congratulations, and everybody push that button and buy Renee's book wherever your favorite, who you'd like to support. In these days, people are picking different places that they'd like to support in buying a book, and choose your favorite place, and know that there's some really, really nice insights that are waiting for you that might stimulate you to change your life in a really good way. So I'm excited for Renee's book, and I'm excited for all of you who get to read the wisdom and the insights, and whether you join Renee's walking class or not, but whether you're just inspired to do your own walks. I mean, what an amazing tool for all of us. And so I just want to send blessings to all of you, and blessings to Renee for the amazing work that you put out.
Thank you, Sandra. And to everyone out there who listens to us. We'll see you over at the Shaman's Cave.